I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
Hello, and welcome to the beginning of what I'm hoping is going to be Season 2 of the Science Fiction Divide. I am miraculously still your host, Larry, and to my right, your left, is my sister Jen.
Hi.
And today I'm going to do a video for a movie that I've been wanting to do pretty much since this channel started, because it is one of the coolest science fiction movies that people don't realize is actually science fiction. That would be
Back to the Future.
Fantastic. I don't know, what year was Back to, was that
85.
85?
84, 85.
That's what I was thinking. Like a whole bunch of...
I knew I should have kept the IMDb page up.
There was like a whole slew of movies that came out around that time that were just like fantastic movies. But Back to the Future is one of those science fiction movies that I'm like, it's for science fiction. It's science fiction for people that don't like science fiction or don't realize it's science fiction. And meanwhile, it's a time travel movie with the mad scientist, doctor, genius, one of the coolest characters in all of science fiction. Yet, it's really yes, it's really just a story about a kid discovering who his parents are in the past. But there was a few things that I wanted to do with this episode today. But the first is I wanted to open it up to my sister. Like, what did that movie mean to you? Like, what made that movie important?
Well, let's see. I was like 6 when it came out, and I just had a mad crush on Michael J. Fox. That's pretty much. But I mean, it was funny. I can't really remember what exactly drew me to the movie. Well, Michael J. Fox probably did. I liked it. I thought it had a good storyline. It was funny. It was different from what I was used to. I can't really remember watching any like time travel movies before then. I mean, like I said, I was 6, so I don't really remember much before then. But I can definitely remember watching that with like you and Robin and Mom and Dad. It's a good family movie, and I think everything's in the movie plot and everything, it still can hold up to today's standards. Movie time, even the effects. And you look at a lot of movies back from the 80s, the special effects, and you're just like, no. I mean, granted, the most special effects in that movie is like the flames from the tires. Like, there's really no others. It's not like a science fiction space movie or whatnot. So it's, I don't know.
See, I was thinking when Doc Brown was on the clock and he was putting the lightning, like science fiction loves to have apparently the speed of light. You can watch it like curl through things when it should be instantaneous, but it's just a good plot device. But yeah, otherwise you're right. Like the movie's special effects were very low budget. Like you had the DeLorean itself, but it was a practical effect. It wasn't really a special effect. I can't really think of anything else in that movie that was other than the actual time traveling.
In the second one, you had the car flying. But that's easy green screen, and the background was just kind of like a sky. At the end of the first one, and the second one, it's a little bit more involved because you have the car surrounded by other flying cars and whatnot. So that budget was probably that was the effects, but still it was still pretty good. Plus Universal made a pretty cool ride out of it. And if Universal made a ride out of it, then it's got to be a good movie.
I can only imagine the new rides that are going to be coming out for Star Wars, but that's a whole other movie.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about with this movie in particular was the way that people look at themselves, particularly as we get older, how we view ourselves looking back. And the thing that I took from the Back to the Future, at least the first one, was Marty's mother's opinion of herself, or the memories she had of herself. particularly when she was talking to Marty about his girlfriend.
Any girl who calls the boy is just asking for trouble. Girls chasing boys. When I was your age, I never chased a boy or called a boy or sat in a parked car with a boy.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're never going to tell your kids, yeah, I drank all the time in high school. I started smoking, and you're not going to tell your kids that because you realize the mistakes that you made, and you just don't want your kids to follow in those mistakes, so you lie to them. Is it right? Maybe not. I mean, Mom and Dad were fairly honest with us, and we were 3 different results, pretty much, you know? So, you know, whether you tell the truth or you lie to your kids, they're going to do what they're going to do.
Well, I would agree with you. The only thing that I see, at least in that movie, is my perception of what was her name again?
Lorraine.
Lorraine. I was thinking Eleanor. Lorraine is. I think she believed the thing she was saying because after Marty comes back from the past and everything's changed, her perception of who she was and the relationship she had with George and Biff, that's changed also. You know, where it was, her perception was like her life just sucked. Looking back, in the end, it was just like, well, if it wasn't for him, we would have never gotten married.
Father kissed me for the very first time on that dance floor. It was then that I realized I was going to spend the rest of my life with him.
The perception I have is that she sees like, no, like, things were great back then at the end of that movie, but in the beginning, you know, you get the feeling that she's like, kill me now.
Yeah.
Kill me. Yeah. And then when you go back and you see what Lorraine was like as a kid, you know, I tend to think like, was she misremembering who she was? Was she flat out lying? Or was it just her version of the truth? You know, so, and of course you can never be sure about that. Mm-hmm. It's very, like, her self-perception may not have matched up with what, if I said what the objective reality is of her past, you know, how everybody else would have seen her, or we as the audience watched her past, and it was just like, no, what you said in the beginning, that's not who you really were. And Marty really was, like, I think like the scene that really clinches that for me is that scene where he's in the car and he's like, oh my God, you smoke too? And she, Marty, you're starting to sound an awful lot like my mother. And what? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But to me, I think that was such a cool scene. Because I've often wondered, like, what would it be like if I was able to see my parents as teenagers? Or, you know, would I be like, dude, you are as awkward as I thought you would be? Or like, wow, they really are cool, and I never really, like, I would never have, like, thought of that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that comes to mind with that is the high school bully, Biff. Mm-hmm. Like,
he's just a bully throughout life. It's not like, you know, he's like the only character that doesn't change. I mean, yes and no. At the end of the first one, he's all like, not subservient. Am I using that word right?
Like
he's all like, yeah, I just waxed your car, Mr. McFly, you know, and he's not like a dick. But then when they jump to the future in the second one, which is supposedly the future from that, old Biff seems to be a dick.
Yeah. I see where you're going. I never thought about it that way. Yeah, like,
you know, at least to his grandson, you know, he's like, hello, you know, hitting him with the cane. You know, he steals the time machine, goes back. So, you know, he's like the only character I feel that didn't really change. You know, why is his grandson a dick? Wouldn't he have kind of taught lessons to whoever his grandson's father or mother, you know, whichever child belonged to him, or maybe it's genetics.
I was going to say, it could be that whole skip a generation thing.
Yeah.
I thought in the first go-through, before Marty goes back to the past, like, no one ever put Biff in his place. And my perception is he continued to be a dick. And to George in particular. Like, he completely was a really bad person to George. But then after he comes back from the past, obviously George put Biff in his place. Now George is the one in control just because of that one incident where he clocks him.
he's not bullying him, but he kind of is, like, because you look in the sense where it's like, now Biff, I know I told you 2 coats of wax, not 1.
Don't con me, Biff.
He's like, he's being a dick, but in a fun, maybe sarcastic way, or maybe because, the role reversal, that's how I look at it, because George was cool,
Right.
or, and so it's maybe, I forgot where I was going with that.
Sorry, that train of thought derailed, killing everybody.
Pretty much, yeah.
I thought, like, the cool thing about that series was, that it shows single event can change the course of the rest of your life. And I mean, I've already talked about that extensively last season with the butterfly effect, but Back to the Future is essentially, like, again, butterfly effects. This event, if I turn left, it's going to change the course of my life. If I turn right, it's going to change the course of my life. And what you see in those movies is the extent of that single event, years down the line, how it changed everything. The same thing comes to mind. You saw 2009 Star Trek?
Yes.
That singular event changed the course of galactic history when the Romulans come through the black hole. Mm-hmm. And it's like so many things have changed. I mean, some things are still similar, but it's a different world now. It's in that case, it's a different galaxy. But Back to the Future did the same thing.
Back to the Future was before all those.
Yes.
I mean, that obviously wasn't the first time travel movie.
Yeah.
But, it came before Butterfly Effect and the Star Trek and all that.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, except that, he was able, while he was there, he had X amount of time to fix it.
Right. And I've seen that before where, like, it's kind of like the events at a different time in the movie, like 30, that one, he's in 55, right, so he came from 1985. Mm-hmm. 30 years later, but he had, say, 2 days to correct what was going on in the past, or was it like a week, whatever the time was.
Yeah, like 5 days to a week or something.
And in the meantime, what you assume is in the future, whatever he's doing is affecting 30 years down the line. So his brother started to disappear, his sister started to disappear, he started to disappear, but it wasn't instantaneous. It was just like time spent in the 50s is time changed in the 80s. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an instantaneous paradox, I guess. But I like that, and I've seen that before. I mean, it's a good plot device, obviously. It's a rush against time, or my future is going to be erased.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. I mean, maybe it's because, like, the universe or whatever knew he had to travel back.
See, I was thinking when you were saying that Terminator kind of used the same plot device.
Dr. Emmett Brown? Yes? Doc! Come with me if you want to live.
You go back to the past, and events are going to happen to change the future, but in the future you would have known that would have happened anyway.
As much as I, not to switch topics, as much as I love the Terminator and I love that whole story and whatnot, it does get confusing because of the whole, well, if you stop Judgment Day, John Connor's father doesn't get sent back, and then he doesn't exist, so, that just makes my head explode when I think about it like that, but, yeah, that's why you couldn't really, it's kind of like, though, if Marty doesn't go, Marty's now in the 50s, and he says, like, hey, if you ever have a kid that, lights the carpet on fire or whatever, but then that young Marty that hasn't been born yet, is he going to go back in the, is he going to go back in time now? Because maybe he won't. Maybe now because, that the future's changed, the Marty won't become friends with Doc, and he won't go back in the,
Right.
But, then you just keep getting time things in the timelines, and it, boom.
See, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the one thing that I thought, like, the ending of that movie, where Doc was saying the entire movie, like, you can't tell me anything about the future, and then, in the end, he whips out the letter anyway, I thought was a really cool twist. I remember as a kid thinking, like, that's so cool, because we assume, obviously, when was it Iranians or Libyans?
Libyans.
I think.
Yeah.
Shoot Doc, okay, obviously he's dead. It was like, we didn't go far enough into the movie to actually know that for sure. But meanwhile, that Doc knew, is like, he knew all the events of the past. He knows Marty's going to come back. And meanwhile, he spent the entire time, he knew Marty going, you know, he obviously didn't inform him, like, this is what's going to happen. You know, he played it off like...
But that's because that Doc in that alternate reality didn't know. You know, it's got to remember, it's a different reality. Beginning of the movie, it's it's an alternate timeline. You know, the beginning of the movie is like, I almost want to say poor McFlys, as opposed to the end of the movie. George has a book done. They're like rich McFlys.
Right.
So it could, the Doc in that reality in the beginning of the movie, he probably died. But then Marty goes back, and the Doc in this reality lived because he got the letter.
I never thought about it that way. I think that's a really cool way of looking at it. Is like, I've talked about this in other videos. There's time travel and there's dimension travel. And by interfering with the past, it becomes interdimensional travel. He went back to a different universe.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would say if it wasn't meant to happen that way. There's certain science fiction time travel movies, like, did you ever see 12 Monkeys?
Yeah.
12 Monkeys, that was the way it was supposed to happen. He had to go back in order for the future to happen the way it did. So it's circular time, it's circular, there's a term for it, but basically the past can't happen without the future. And then when the future happens, and they go back to the past, that was the way it was supposed to happen. But in the Back to the Future movies, like the way we're looking at it, is like, no, you're changing dimensions. Like, you're going back to a place, you're altering history, and a new timeline is set forward.
It's kind of like one thing I wonder about if you get to the second movie. And remember, he draws that whole line, we're somewhere, future Biff went back, creating an alternate reality, blah, blah, blah. So, my question, because, when they end up going, Marty goes towards the end of the movie, when they go back in the past to get the almanac back, there's another Marty there. The Marty from the first one. And, the Doc from 1955 is there, but Doc from 1985 is there. So, then in Back to the Future 2, is there, when Biff is like, you're supposed to be at boarding school. Well, chances are there is a Marty at boarding school, and there is a Doc in a sanitarium. And, it's an alternate reality that they're accidentally in. And, so it's like, I forgot where I was going with that one again, but, yeah.
So in a way it's kind of interdimensional, and in a way it's kind of real time travel, where the past is the future is influencing the past.
Yes.
Well, the other thing, when he came back to Hill Valley and he watched himself leave for the past, this is again where is it a question of interdimensional, or was he really, he went back to the past, influenced the future, but was still able to witness the things that he did to change things. If you think about it, your brain's going to start to hurt.
Yeah.
All right.
Because did that Marty come back in the other Marty in the second movie? Did he come back from the future from the beginning of the first movie, or is he from the future at the end of the first movie?
This is why with time travel movies, thinking about it too hard is not a good idea.
As it reminds me of in Austin Powers 2.
If I travel back to 1969 and I was frozen in 1967, presumably I could go visit my frozen self. But if I'm still frozen in 1967, how could I have been unthawed in the 90s and traveled back to...
No, I've gone cross-eyed.
Yes.
It's just like, because you think about it too much and your head will explode.
Yep. The sci-fi nerdiness is secondary to the story, which is what I think Back to the Future was able to do, and why, like I said in the beginning, it's science fiction for people that don't like science fiction, because the sci-fi, the nerdiness part, takes a backseat to the story as opposed to driving the story. When the story is not a time travel story, it's pretty much a story of the relationship between Marty and his parents, and what he perceived that they were like and what they really were like. Although I do have to recommend, if you ever get a chance to watch the blooper reel for the original one where Marty dresses up in a tank top and puts on a hairnet and he visits his mother.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Not going to go too much more
school,
into it.
Isn't it?
Yes. I'm not going to go too much into it because I do try to keep my videos family friendly, but it's worth checking out. And I'm sure, you know what? I'll probably put a link to because I'm sure somewhere on YouTube I should be able to find it. I'll put a link to that, like right there. I strongly suggest you check it out. Mm-hmm. You know if there really is a Hill Valley, California?
I don't know.
Because I'm thinking if there is, there's going to be a mecca of nerds going sometime around October 2015, anxiously awaiting for the arrival of Marty McFly, who will obviously not show up. Unless, like, for some reason, Michael J. Fox is just like, fine, I'll do it. You know.
Hey, he still looks the exact same. He could probably put on those clothes and everyone would be like, whoa.
Really, it's him. I can see that. That would be really cool. What am I doing here? Call my agent. I need to get on this. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching the beginning of Season 2 of the Science Fiction Divide. And I hope to see you in my next video. Thanks to my sister Jen. And I'd like to thank my girlfriend Tara for letting me use her place to do this. And that's it. Bye.
Bye.